Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. We begin tonight with Prime Minister Trudeau promising a very strong response if the U.S. imposes tariffs on Canadian goods. President Donald Trump already suggested he could follow through on it by the end of next week. CBC's Ashley Burke is in Quebec, where the federal cabinet is strategizing on how to deal with that threat.
Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning.
The Prime Minister says his cabinet's sole focus is stopping U.S. tariffs. But if Donald Trump doesn't back down, Canada will hit back.
Our response will be robust and rapid and measured, but very strong. The goal will be to get those tariffs off as quickly as possible.
To do that, Justin Trudeau says everything is on the table, even matching tariffs on U.S. goods.
I support the principle of dollar for dollar matching tariffs. It's something that we are absolutely going to be looking at if that is how they move forward.
Trudeau and his cabinet meeting again after a chaotic day. Trump originally signed an executive order saying tariffs could happen after a 3-month study.
We are establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs.
But late last night, Trump threw Canada off kilter, musing to reporters he could impose a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods next week.
Canada's a very bad abuser also. Vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in.
When do you think you would enact those?
I think February 1st.
Canada's ambassador to the U.S. says bad abuser isn't how Canada would talk about its closest ally when it comes to border security.
It's part of an overall strategy, a bit of distraction, a bit of having people focus on a word that's being used and not on getting down to the work.
The industry minister says if Trump wants to bring in his golden age, he needs Canada to make it shine.
They understand, they're in the front line of that. They understand that they won't be tariffed without impact, they cannot be tariffed without consequences, and they cannot be tariffed without costs for the U.S. consumers.
If there is a trade war, Trudeau says the government plans on compensating Canadian consumers and businesses. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Montebello, Quebec.
It is day 2 of a trial involving a Windsor police officer. Today's hearing highlighted inconsistencies in his accuser's story. Jason Vio has been following the details and has more.
There's a Windsor police officer on trial right now for 3 assault-related charges. Sergeant Deller Ball has pleaded not guilty in the judge-alone trial taking place in Ottawa this week. This altercation happened on September 23, 2023, inside the men's room at an Ottawa bar. 45-year-old Donald Connor went in and was using the only stall in that men's room. Then Ball entered, started to push open the unlocked stall door when Connor was still inside. And that's the first time the court heard those 2 men interacted and spoke to one another. Connor testified that the attack that happened after he left that stall was unprovoked and that Ball dealt a flurry of punches to his face, resulting in 2 fractures, 1 in his sinuses. Here's a picture of those injuries. And on day 2 of the trial, Ball's defense lawyer asked Connor questions about inconsistencies in his testimony. Those sometimes differed from what he told police in a recorded interview the day after this happened. First, Connor told Ottawa police in 2023 that Ball said sorry after attempting to open the stall door, but Connor testified during the trial that he doesn't recall Ball apologizing and wished he would have. After exiting the stall, Connor testified he saw Ball at the urinal on the phone. Connor said he heard Ball swear and say, "Someone is messing with my call." But Connor told police in 2023 that he heard Ball say someone was using the hand dryer for too long and that he'd call them back. Connor also testified on Monday that he grabbed Ball's elbows and unintentionally pulled his sweater over his head as a way to stop the punches. But on Tuesday, Connor testified he grabbed Ball's shoulders and then intentionally pulled his sweater over his head. Ball's defense lawyer says Connor's recollection of the events are changing and that he's leaving parts of the story out, which paints a picture that's not accurate. Ultimately, Ball's defense lawyer suggested Connor took an aggressive stance toward Ball after leaving the stall, picked him up by the front of his shirt, slammed him against the wall, and held Ball by his neck as Connor was trying to open the bathroom door. Connor said that's all incorrect. The trial continues Wednesday when the defense is expected to bring forward new evidence. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
It is time now for a quick weather update. Riley Lachuk has more.
Well, Kat, another chilly one throughout the day today. A few flurries out there, but I want to draw your attention to this purple here. This is an extreme cold warning in place for Windsor, for southwestern Ontario, really all of southern Ontario. Looking at wind chill values, minus 30 to minus 35 overnight tonight. I'll go into detail a little bit later on what exactly that means as we get through the overnight hours tonight. But waking up tomorrow morning, minus 19 in Windsor, Chatham, Kent looking at minus 20. Below seasonal for this time of the year for overnight lows, and really that's what we get really right across southern Ontario is much colder conditions than seasonal. Minus 22 the overnight temperature in Windsor tonight, with the wind chill feeling closer to minus 31. We pick up a little bit more wind again tomorrow, southwest 20 gusting to 40, minus 10 tomorrow afternoon, and there's a bit of relief on the way. I'll have that when I come back.
Thank you, Riley. Up next, a local photographer is capturing everyday life on Windsor's streets. A snapshot of some of the beauty, but also some of the despair. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa brings us this story.
In a flash, Ryan Segan captures a fleeting moment. Often it's people on Windsor's downtown streets. The photo's a glimpse of what it means to live, work, or just be in the city.
I just kind of walk down the street and whatever stands out to me, I guess, whatever makes me feel something or like catches my eye.
It's been a little over a year since Segan started hunting for photos. With a camera in hand, he roams the streets, ready to capture a scene.
You have to be athletic and you have to like see through people almost, and you have to see situations before they happen. And there's like two levels of success. Like the success is like being out here, you know, it feels really good. And then when I do get the picture, that's like you win the lottery, you know.
He wants the images to make people feel and think. A good photo, he says, leaves you asking questions.
I hope they feel what I felt, like, or maybe like whatever inspired me to take that photo. I hope that kind of transitions onto them, I guess. But then again, I don't care what people think. Like, I'm doing this for me, so.
An expert at the Detroit Institute of Arts says that street photography has gotten harder in recent years. People aren't as open to being randomly photographed on the streets, and it can be challenging to strike a balance between building trust with the community and also capturing authentic moments. But she says if done right, it can be extremely valuable, especially in smaller cities like Windsor.
I think you get to experience a little bit of a place that you're not necessarily from and get a sense for the way the streets look, the way that people look, the way that people behave on the streets, you know, bringing home their groceries at night, riding a bicycle, doing everyday things that most people would just not really see, right? So those everyday experiences that kind of define human experience at large are a way for you to understand that specific culture.
When asked what his photos show about Windsor at this moment in time, Segan says,
help. Clearly, I mean, it's kind of a depressing city, I guess, especially looking around at the downtown core. This is our core. Why does it look like this? You know, most people you see around here are unhappy, they're miserable. Most of them are experiencing homelessness. So I think that's what stands out the most. Like, we need help.
That report was put together by our Jennifer LaGrassa. A young leader and familiar face is filling an empty seat at the table at the public school board. Dalton Chen has more about the new appointment.
The Greater Essex County District School Board has a new trustee, and he's decades younger than most of his fellow board members. 20-year-old Malik Makawi was recently appointed by board vote to be the trustee representing wards 3, 4, and 10.
I think because of my age, I bring a fresh perspective, a unique perspective, and honestly an informed perspective. I feel as if I have a good rapport with our students, our educators, the community at large, and I'll be able to bring that informed perspective to the board.
Makawi replaces trustee Sarah Sipkar, who resigned from the board last November, citing professional and personal commitments. The board interviewed 10 candidates to be her replacement. Makawi's experience includes serving as a student trustee on the board from 2021 to 2022. He's now in his third year of the engineering program at the University of Windsor. In his public interview process, Makawi praised the board's efforts to foster an inclusive environment representing the diversity of the student population. And as for parents who might feel a person as young as him can't relate to them or represent their interests, Makawi says he's looking forward to building a relationship.
Obviously, I wasn't elected as the other board members have been, but I'm hopeful that over the next year and a half of my tenure here, as we carry out the rest of the term, that I'll be able to gain their trust and work collectively with our community to hopefully work on things that matter most to them.
Macaulay will hold the trustee position until the next municipal election, scheduled for October 2026. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
Windsor's most famous home, Willisted Manor, has some new artwork for its walls, a commissioned portrait of Mary Walker, the Lady of the Manor. But how do you capture the likeness of someone who was famously camera shy when only a handful of images of them are known to exist? Here's more on the Lady of the Manor and how her portrait came to be.
She was the wife of Edward Walker. He's the second son of Hiram Walker. She was a wonderful person in terms of being outgoing and welcoming to people in the community. They entertained quite a bit in her home. So she was a very sort of spirited, philanthropic, always involved in various causes, and just very welcoming from what we understand. We were struggling with how we could depict her, but because we did a documentary, so much research went into that we really discovered that we had some fairly good images of Mary. That's really how this sort of came about. She was the Lady of the Manor, and she needed to be presented there. Louise Brown, who was a founding member of our board, came to us with an artist, Michelle Van Murick, and once we saw her repertoire of work, which was greatly portraits and period-looking portraits, we felt confident that she was the person to be best with this task.
It was quite the challenge, but I was very excited about it. Working from the one photo that was found in the cornerstone at the school dedication, I used that primarily, and there was another one. I had enlarged the two photos with a photocopier and used a light table so I could trace the features and get them correct. I did a pencil sketch of what I believed would sort of marry the two images together. I did a lot of color studies. I had gone to a lot of costume houses, antique markets and whatnot to try to find a Gibson girl style shirt that she was wearing. I didn't have any luck finding something that I thought would match the photo as closely as possible, so I actually wound up making one. I wound up making the hat as well. There was a lot of work that went into this, believe me.
Very cool. All right. Move over pickleball. There is a new racket sport coming to town, and it is called padel. The Windsor Racket Club is opening the city's first padel courts any day now, but already overseas, the sport has taken off. So what exactly is padel? Well, producer Sonia Varma went across the border to a padel facility in Sterling Heights, Michigan, and she breaks down the game from how to play it to how to say it.
What you're looking at is a game of padel. Padel is one of the fastest growing racket sports in the world. But while it's booming in parts of Europe, many people locally have never heard of it. So what is padel, or as some call it, paddle?
It's a very social, fun sport, has a lot of similarities from all the racket sports. It's like a mix of tennis and racquetball, I would say.
It's fun, it's exciting, it's fresh, it's new, it's like a faster paced tennis.
Take some elements of tennis, racquetball, and squash, and you've got padel. Points are counted like tennis, the courts are smaller and caged, and the ball is similar to the one in tennis, but softer, so it can go much faster. And of course, it can be played off the walls. So what makes padel so popular? First, it's social, played in pairs, and it's robust.
You know, people are diving around, they're running around, you're lunging like you would in squash, you're on a full sprint sometimes. I mean, it's got so much, you gotta be so athletic.
I would say a regular 60 minutes, you burn close to 1,000 calories, so it's a really good workout.
While it's a fast-paced game, people who play it say it's for anybody.
It has a very low entry level. You can be anywhere from, I think our youngest one's playing here is 4 years old, all the way up to mid-80s.
And what about the name of the game? Adrian Mag calls it padel. Robert Kellberg says paddle. So just how do you say it?
Overseas in Europe, it's called paddle. Here in America, you call it padel. And that's because they have platform tennis they call paddle, so that's why.
But Kellberg says give it a few years. He thinks the paddle name will take over and stick, just like the game.
Looks like so much fun. Live look outside there. Stay with us. We will have more news for you right after the break. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump signed several executive orders on his first day in office, including some involving the U.S.-Mexico border that has already come into effect. Richard Madden has more on the orders and the implications.
Well, President Trump's emergency declaration along the southern border took effect at 6 a.m. local time here in McAllen, Texas, and it's business as usual, despite the fact that this emergency declaration unlocks resources and personnel from the military. The Trump administration channeling that there would be a show of force along the southern border. So officials here are waiting to see when and if that should happen in the next few days. Now, this is a southern border separating Texas and Mexico. It's about 30 feet high. That's about 8 feet. And it has been a cornerstone of the Trump campaign to secure the border, including this emergency declaration that was one of his first executive orders as commander-in-chief and president. Beyond the National Guard expected to be deployed here, we're expecting to see more surveillance cameras. We're expecting to see more of a show of force as this new administration takes into office. And with it are growing concerns by residents in this community that people that may have their paperwork here or undocumented immigrants who work on farms and in construction could be deported, and that could have a significant impact on the economy. There's also the political concerns that many undocumented migrants or people with their papers would be targeted and profiled. Listen to this.
There's a lot of fear. There's great concern. People are having to decide whether to go out on the street, whether to go to work. Tomorrow they've got to face up to whether they should take their children to school, and just genuine concerns that President Trump wants to carry through on his promise to engage in the largest mass removal of immigrants from this country.
And two other major executive orders signed by the president yesterday. Number one, he has canceled what's called the CBP app, and that was for potential asylum seekers to book appointments with citizenship judges in the U.S. That has been canceled. Their appointments have also been canceled along with it. Richard Madden, CBC News, McAllen, Texas.
The ceasefire in Gaza continues to hold, but now Israeli security forces are focusing on Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. At least 8 people have been killed and dozens more wounded in what Israel's prime minister called an extensive and significant military operation. Sasha Petrusek has more.
The Israeli military operation today is one of the more serious flashpoints that we've seen over the last little while. It's in the north end of the occupied West Bank and around the area of Jenin and the adjacent refugee camps. Now, these camps have been known as bases for various militant groups, including Hamas and Islamic Jihad, groups that Israel considers to be allied with Iran and therefore a major enemy. This has been an area of friction, not only between these militant groups and Israel, but also a problem for the Palestinian Authority. That is the group that runs many things in the occupied territories and has had its own forces tied up in these camps and in these areas for a while. Now, the occupied West Bank in general has seen a higher level of volatility over the last little while, partly because of Israeli settlers who have attacked a number of Palestinian villages and encampments, farm fields, those kinds of things, setting cars on fire, and in some cases fighting with Palestinians. These groups have become more aggressive as the war in Gaza has gone on, and the former President of the United States, Joe Biden, had tried imposing sanctions on some of the more violent settlers in that area. Well, with an executive order, Donald Trump has removed those sanctions. So these groups also feel more empowered. They also have allies within the ruling coalition in Israel, the political parties there. And so this has raised the tension level in the West Bank. These actions today, this military operation, could raise them even further. So we could see an escalation of the kind of violence that has occasionally broken out in the occupied West Bank. Sasha Petrusek, CBC News, Jerusalem.
We'll have weather right after the break. More on weather now. With that stinging cold in the air, how bad is it and how long is it going to last? Riley Lachuk brings us up to speed.
Well, Katerina, I wanted to go a bit into detail on what some of these wind chill numbers mean, especially when we start to see them getting into the -30 range and colder. So overnight in Windsor, looking at a wind chill of about -32, -31 by the time we get to the morning hours tomorrow. Sarnia, for example, looking at a wind chill of -33. And what that means on this scale is the temperature combined with the wind giving us the wind chill and a time that it takes exposed skin to freeze. So at a wind chill factor of -32, we're looking at exposed skin freezing in 20 minutes or less. Of course, this can go up and down based on the wind and how strong it's blowing. So just gives you a sense at why it's important to cover up and why it's important to dress in layers, especially if you're going to be out first thing in the morning when we're seeing some of these cold temperatures. And this cold air really digs quite a ways south. In fact, southern Ontario into Quebec, looking at some of the coldest air in the country right now as we're stuck under this deep ridge of high pressure. And in fact, this is leading to some implications even into the southern states with winter storm warnings, extreme cold warnings along the Gulf Coast, places like Atlanta into the Carolinas, actually looking at even 15 centimeters of snow, which is a little bit unusual for sort of the Gulf Coast region there to see temperatures and conditions like that. We've seen a few streamers coming off of Lake Michigan today. That has led to a few flurries in the Windsor region today, but we have seen a little bit more kind of grazing the coast of Lake Erie as we've gotten throughout the afternoon hours here. So a little bit of lake effect snow. That risk does continue as we get into the evening hours tonight. Otherwise, we are looking at our clouds building in as we get into the day on Wednesday. So by the afternoon hours, mostly cloudy with some peaks of sunshine through the afternoon. A little bit more of a substantial chance of seeing some flurries or some light snow as we get Wednesday overnight into Thursday, driven by some winds once again. So we are looking at a windy couple of days ahead. Really not much in the way of accumulation, but certainly do expect as we get into the day on Thursday that we do see a little bit of light snow really right across southwestern Ontario. The winds remaining an issue as we get through the day on Wednesday. So really gusting 50, even Sarnia, London could see some gusts up to 60 throughout the day on Wednesday out of the south and the southwest. Kind of subsides that chance of lake effect snow off of Lake Michigan, but certainly will be a breezy one as we get through the day tomorrow. Temperatures -10 to -12 throughout the day tomorrow. And then Katerina, we're looking at conditions warming up, -7 for Thursday. And by the time we get to the weekend, back at seasonal once again.
Thank you for that, Riley. And thanks so much to you all for watching. That is it for CBC Windsor News. Stay safe, stay warm out there. See you tomorrow.